Greetings and salutations, Perfect Reject here, WolfSnake Games, and I'm here to bring you guys a hands-on review for the original Xbox. A honking beast of a console, if I say so myself. Kind of tried and true right there, because you know how American muscle cars are made? Well, that's pretty much how they made this console originally, and it was, surprisingly, most people probably don't know this, but it was the first American console to make it back into the market since the Atari Jaguar. Now first we're going to take a look at the console itself, then we're going to move on. I'm sorry this one has a couple of scuff marks and whatnot. Haven't had a chance to crack into this thing and clean it, or my other one that's actually hooked up, mostly because the screw caps and I believe the screws themselves are a little bit fancy, so that's a little bit of a problem, but either way it'll work out. So we're going to take a look at the front of the console first. As you can see, 4 controller ports, so kind of a standard at this time. I think they're labeled, yep, 1, 2, 3, 4. Has Microsoft logo down here, tells you compact disc and Dolby Digital are compatible with it. You have your eject button with the light around it that shows the power button itself down here. The disc drive actually has Xbox embroidered on it pretty well. If you look at the top of the console, you see Xbox embroidered into this green, which is coated with a kind of clear plastic. Almost feels a little bit like it's a rubber plastic compound. Has a giant X across the entire front. These nice little sleek shiny designs across the top throughout the X. Both sides are pretty much just that. It's the ventilation system, both sides. You have your back, which kind of plain actually. You have another little vent here, same design going across except for down here where the power plugs in, your component cables plug in, and your broadband wire plugs in, Ethernet cable. Along the bottom, it's pretty much just a standard kind of issued little rubber grip so you can plant it down somewhere. You have your 2 warning labels and caution labels and so on and so forth. Your barcode and just this little kind of blank spot. It's one of the very few consoles I know of that doesn't actually have a area designed into it for additional content or hardware to be installed later. As you've seen, I think the PlayStation 1 and, well, pretty much the PlayStation 1, that's pretty much the only one I can think of right off the top of my head. A lot of them didn't utilize it. Now, just kind of going on to the controller, a lot of people, I don't have the original, well, I do have the original controller, and it's really big. This was the S controller, which kind of became the standard that everybody bought later, rather in the Xbox's lifespan. And it's pretty much the standard for what the 360 controller was designed off of, and probably ultimately it seems like everybody said that the Xbox 360 was one of the most ergonomic controllers of all time, and the Xbox One controller is deriving off of that. So it did come with your 2 standard joysticks. It's pretty much the same thing as you expect from a 360 controller. Your A, B, X, Y is all over here. You had black and white buttons down here instead of bumpers, which in later models of the S controller they actually put the black and white buttons up here as bumpers in front of the triggers, which are also present. You still had your 2 slots for memory cards, rumble packs, etc., etc., which I believe some of the later controllers actually had built-in rumble packs as well, so you didn't have to waste one of these slots for it. All pretty nice stuff. I mean, it's pretty standard, it's fairly comfortable. The D-pad needed a lot of work, and they worked on that later in the 360's life, which that one's still not quite dead. They're probably still working on some nice nifty little hardware and this and that for it. I think they just released a couple of new models too with the Xbox One. But overall, that's pretty much all there is to say about the controller. It's pretty standard for what you would expect nowadays, other than the fact that at the end of the wire it actually had a breakaway, so that was really nice. That was one thing that I loved about this thing very significantly, because having these wires all across the room, and then you, like your friends or whatever who aren't playing, trying to figure out something to do, get up and walk across the room or something, and they just trip over it, pull your whole console on the floor instead of just break away, and it's like, oh, please reconnect your controller to the console to play. So it was pretty nice. Other than that, it's pretty much just kind of going into the history. I do have a couple of games here, well, a game and a couple versions, and the console itself was actually released in November 15th, 2001 here in North America. So it's one of the very few consoles that was actually released here in North America before it was in other countries, other states. And it was released at $299.99. Pretty commendable price compared to what you're seeing nowadays. In Japan, it was actually released February 22nd of 2002 and March 14th of 2002 in Europe and Australia. At I think it was 6 years. 6 years in Japan, or well, 5 years in Japan. In 2007, the console's life ended. In the European and North America areas, it actually ended in 2008. Gave about an extra 2 years in North America, extra year in Europe, give or take. It was Microsoft's first installment into the console franchise, and it was actually designed because of DirectX and their connection to Microsoft. They wanted to kind of push it out and say, you know, we want to make a console. Bill Gates wasn't too happy with it, but he heard him out and he finally changed his mind, and it was originally actually called the Direct Xbox, based off of the DirectX driver, as everybody knows for computers. But ultimately, they decided to just shorten it to the Xbox, so that's why it's got its color scheme with the green and everything else. The DirectX is actually running on the console itself, along with the operating system that's made as from Windows software. It was also, like I said before, it was the first American console since the Atari Jaguar left the market, that came back out in the States and really kind of pushed to try to get something going. Much like PlayStation did with the PlayStation 1, they took a major price hit for this first console, but it wound up working out for them, and ultimately the Xbox 360 and now the Xbox One has come from it. Even though Xbox One is kind of an iffy thing right now, it seems. I haven't really heard too much good about it, but I'm still waiting to see. When this console was released, it was released in the 6th generation consoles, 6th generation console war, and it was up against the Dreamcast, the PlayStation 2, and the GameCube. All three of these had online capabilities. The GameCube had the least games that actually functioned with it. The Dreamcast, even though it was in the same wave as the Xbox, it stopped producing consoles before the Xbox was actually released, and thus the Xbox really didn't have to worry about going up against Dreamcast at all. And the only thing it really had to compete with at all was the online servers, and even that, it wasn't too much of a problem because they didn't have too many games. PlayStation 2, on the other hand, was still pushing out games and working on their online compatibility. The only issues with PlayStation 2 is, unlike both the Xbox and the Dreamcast, it didn't come with the modem built into the console upon release. So you had to buy a separate adapter, which I believe at the time ran right at $80. I know it was $50 for the GameCube one. And ultimately, what really set Xbox ahead with the online compatibility and everything is the fact that they had better servers, and it required a broadband cable, which was not adopted, but it did have a faster connection. And this is one of the reasons that people started adopting that broadband, that Ethernet cable, and really utilizing it in their household. Other than that, one of the main things that really helped push the Xbox to its standards and where it was in console as we know it, as actual gaming system, Halo 2. This was the best-selling game on the Xbox, and I believe it still actually holds that record today at it was 8 million copies before the Xbox itself had closed the doors and everything else. And I know for a long time after the Xbox, when the Xbox 360 was still going, up until Halo Reach was announced, I believe, they still had the servers up for people to go and play this game, and it was really one of the biggest and hottest selling games, especially for online play for the time. So overall, I mean, Xbox has had a pretty interesting history, considering how short-lived it's been so far. It's only been in 3 generations, whereas like even the PlayStation has some pretty interesting stuff. Nothing I know too much about, as you guys can probably see in my old video, but it has some pretty interesting stuff. I just need to delve a little more, considering it's not my forte. So, without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this video off here. It's probably been a little longer than I wanted it to be anyway. So, if you like this video, comment, rate, like, subscribe. If you like this video, give it a like. This is Perfect Reject.